is yours.
Lou, thank you very much. It's very nice to talk to you, and hopefully everyone can see the slides. What got you here won't get you there. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'm from Valley Station, Kentucky. I went to school at Rose-Hulman Institute, a small engineering school. Got an MBA at Indiana U, PhD at UCLA, college professor and dean when I was 29, and I've been doing executive education for 29 years. And I do three things. I teach classes in business schools and in large companies, executive ed classes, which is what I love doing the most. I do executive coaching, which is what I'm most famous for, and where I learn everything. By the way, if you look at my new book, everything I've learned is pretty much from my clients. And then the final thing is I do write and edit, and I have a request for everyone. My first request is, well, buy my new book if you haven't already got it. My second request is go to www.marshallgoldsmithlibrary.com. For those of you who have not been there before, I give everything away. All of my articles, materials, videos, audios, it's all online. It's all free. You can copy, share, download, duplicate, use any of my material with anyone you want. If you want to use it in your church, your nonprofit, your charity, please feel free to do that. If you want to use it in your business, please feel free to do that. I'm a Buddhist, and my basic life philosophy is just give things away. So if any of my material can help you or anyone around you have a better life, please feel free to use any of this stuff with anyone you want. Although it's very clear on the website you don't need approvals to do this, if you do need approval from your corporation, send me a note. I'd be happy to send you approvals. My email address is also listed, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. If there's any questions you have you'd like to send me through email, please send me an email. Given my travel schedule, which is the only hard part of my job, on American Airlines I have 9.5 million frequent flyer miles, I can't promise I'm going to get back to you in a day. But I always get back to people. So if you send me an email, I will always get back to you sometime. I live in Rancho Santa Fe, California. If you'd ever like to come out and visit, I take a walk with my dog Bo every morning between 7 and 8 a.m. Just come out, let me know you're in town, and I'd be happy we go for a walk. So anyway, that's who I am. Let's get started. Goals for today. Number one, understand the classic challenges faced by successful leaders. I'm going to start not with teaching leaders what to do, it's teaching leaders what to stop. And I'll go into why that's important. Number two, we're going to talk about something called feedforward, a very positive, upbeat tool for development that's been used with people. And by the way, if you'd like to send in comments as I'm speaking, I love getting questions and comments as I do webinars. Please feel free to send in a question or comment. And my first question to you, and if the answer is yes, you can send me a reply. Have any of you ever used feedforward before? If the answer is yes or no, let me know. And number two, what was your result? How did it go for you? Well, this is a real positive, upbeat tool for developing people that I'm going to talk about how to use. A model that you can use to develop yourself as a leader and as a partner. And I think that are in the coaching business, very, very important that we know how all this applies to us personally. Because I have a general theory, if you don't to you, you don't know how it applies to others. So the first person we have to understand how all this stuff applies to is ourselves. Then be better able to coach the staff and help them achieve positive change. And finally, learn new applications of peer coaching. Learn new applications of peer coaching. And I'm very excited about this concept of peer coaching. I kind of think it's the future of coaching. And again, I've already got my first comment. Haven't used feedforward yet, want to know what it is, and I will cover that in the session. And again, any questions that you have, just send them in, and I will respond as best I can. Next slide, teaching leaders what to stop. I had the privilege of spending over 50 days with Peter Drucker, world's greatest authority on management. He said, we spend a lot of time teaching leaders what to do. We don't spend enough time helping leaders learn what to stop. He said, half the leaders I meet don't need to learn what to do. They need to learn what to stop. Well, in my new book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, I spend a lot of time talking about classic problems that come with success. And we often think about success and think about, well, gee, this person is successful, therefore they're wonderful. What we don't think about is some of the problems that come with success. So I'm going to talk about today what are some of the classic issues, concerns, or problems that come with success. And for those of you that are interested in coaching, teaching leaders what to stop is a great idea, because it's much more simple and practical, and you often don't have to spend hours and hours teaching them new tools. Just stop doing the following. Let's get started. Annoying habits that can hold us back. The first one, I was interviewed in Harvard Business Review and asked a question, what is the number one problem of the leaders you work with? And the number one problem was winning too much. What does that mean? If it is important, we want to win. If it's meaningful, we want to win. If it's critical, we want to win. If it's trivial, we want to win. And if it's not worth it, we want to win anyway. Why? We like winning. Now I'm going to give you a case study that 75% of my successful clients fail. And I'm going to ask you then, have you ever done this? And here's the case study. You want to go to dinner at restaurant X. Your husband, wife, partner, friend, or significant other wants to go to dinner at restaurant Y. You have a heated argument. You go to restaurant Y. This was not your choice. The food tastes awful and the service is terrible. Option A, critique the food. Point out our partner was wrong, and this mistake could have been avoided if only they'd listened to me. Option B, shut up. Eat the stupid food. Try to enjoy it and have a nice evening. What would I do? What should I do? 75% of my clients, what would I do? Critique the food. What should I do? Shut up. Now, I have a question that you could respond to on the Q&A post. Oh, and by the way, when you critique the food, what happens to your relationship to the other person? They get angry, they get upset. What's the right answer? Shut up. Now, I have a question to everyone out there listening. Question simple. Have you ever critiqued the food before? And if you have, what happened? What happened? What were the outcomes? Send that in as a reply. The next thing, adding too much value. One of my coaching clients is the CEO of a big company. And he said, I asked him, what have you learned about leadership since you've been a CEO? He said, I've learned a very, very hard lesson. My suggestions become orders. My suggestions become orders. He said, if they're smart, they're orders. If they're stupid, they're orders. If they make sense, they're orders. And if they don't make sense, they're still orders. My suggestions become orders. I asked him, what did you learn from me when I was your coach that helps you the most? He said, before I speak, stop and breathe and ask myself one question. Is it worth it? And he said, as the CEO of the company, well, what I've learned is 50% of the time I have the discipline to do this. You know what? Was I right? Maybe. Was it worth it? No, it wasn't worth it. So the important point is, before speaking, just stop and breathe and ask ourselves, is it worth it? If you have teenage kids, did you ever try to prove the teenage child wrong on a minor or insignificant point before? How well did that work out for you? Well, stop and breathe and just ask, is it worth it before speaking? Now, what does adding too much value mean? I'm young, I'm smart, I'm enthusiastic, I report to you, I come to you with an idea. You think it's a great idea. Rather than saying great idea, our tendency is to say that's a nice idea. Why don't you add this to it? And the problem is the quality of the idea may go up 5%. The other person's commitment to make it work may go down 50%. It's no longer that person's idea. My friend David Ulrich taught me a great point. He said effectiveness of execution can be seen as a function of the quality of the idea times that other person's commitment to make it work. When we add too much value, we get so focused on trying to improve the idea, we forget what we're doing to the other person's commitment. And by the way, a lot of times when we're adding too much value, it gets into the next problem. We're not really adding value at all. We're just trying to prove how smart we are. It is very hard for smart, successful people not to constantly go through life proving to everyone around us how smart we are. Now, I'm going to ask everybody, if you don't mind, to send in a percentage answer to this question. How much of all the communication in your organization is spent on one of two issues? Number one, someone talking about how smart they are, or number two, or how wonderful they are, clever or something. And by the way, not just overtly. A lot of times this is more subtle. Or number two, listening to someone else trying to prove how smart they are. How much of all time in organizational communication is spent either having someone talk about how smart they are, how good they are, how wonderful they are, to listening to someone else do this? Just send in a number. There is no exact answer. I'm just curious as to see what people say on the responses. To get some responses, 60%, 30%, 40%. I'm already getting several responses coming in. And I've asked a lot of people this. They're very parallel to the numbers that I tend to see. What are the numbers I tend to see when I ask this question? Very close to the numbers I'm getting from you all. About half the time, this is the major source of organizational communication. Well, if we want to increase productivity, let's all quit doing that so much. If we just quit doing that, we can pick up a lot of time. Now, the next annoying habit, passing judgment. There's those unnecessary need to judge or critique others. And when I talk about feed forward, I want to talk about a technique that really does not involve judging. Again, I'm a Buddhist, and Buddha had an interesting philosophy. He said, never do what I teach because I teach it. Only do what I teach if it makes sense in the context of your own life. Well, when people give us ideas, our first reaction is to judge the idea. One thing I teach in this feed forward process is just learn to say thank you. We don't have to judge people's ideas. You can shut up, listen, and say thank you without judging. And when we do that, we really learn a whole lot more than we do critiquing or judging when everybody tries to help us. Now, next, this is a fun coaching technique, using small amounts of money to create large changes of behavior. Now, in my coaching process, I don't get paid if my clients don't get better. Better's not judged by my client or me, it's judged by everyone around my client. And a common misconception, and I work with a lot of bankers, I'm told you cannot change the behavior of a banker or someone in finance if you don't change their compensation system. This is wrong. I never work on changing the compensation. I never work on changing the performance appraisal system, yet I can work with people and help them change behavior. One technique I use is using tiny amounts of money to create large changes in behavior. Now you might think, well, these people don't care about tiny amounts of money. Well, that would be wrong again. Most of my clients, are they women or men? Well, let's face it, they're 80% men at that level. Are they poor or rich? And they're mostly rich. And are they older or younger? Mostly older. Rich old men. Common misperception, rich old men don't care about small amounts of money. That would be wrong. Rich old men hate losing any money. It's not the money, it's the losing. Watch them play golf. They lie, they cheat, they swear at each other. For what? For nothing. For nothing. For absolutely nothing. So, very important to realize it's not the amount of money. They don't like losing. Now let me tell you how I use this. For example, a lot of people I work with are stubborn. By the way, how many of you listening on this call may be just a tad stubborn? Well, I doubt that my clients are the only stubborn people in the world. All of us are a little too stubborn. One technique I really works great with stubborn people is never begin a sentence with no, but, or however. Someone's trying to talk to us, and the first word out of your mouth is no. What's the message? You're wrong. But or however, what does that mean? Disregard everything that came before this word. Well, the way I use small amounts of money is pretty simple. I tell my clients, for every sentence you start with no, but, or however, I'm going to fine you $20. Now, again, these are my big coaching clients. For normal people, I say $2, but it doesn't matter. The amount of money doesn't matter. It's just fining them. So it's one client I'm working with, a great guy. His issue is he's seen as stubborn. I'm reviewing his feedback report. He says, but Marshall, I said, that's free. If I ever talk to you again, start a sentence with no, but, or however, I'm going to fine you $20. He said, but Marshall. I said, 20. He said, no. I said, 40. He goes, no, no, no. 60, 80, 100. By the end of an hour and a half, he'd lost $420. He looked at me. He got a great sense of humor. He smiles. He said, thank you. He said, thank you. He said, I had no idea. I did that 21 times with you bringing it to my attention. How many times would I have done it had you not been bringing it to my attention? 50 times? 100 times? No wonder people think I'm stubborn. First thing I do when somebody tries to talk to me is I either prove I'm right or prove they're wrong. Well, this is a great discipline to get into. Just sit there and get into the discipline. When you start sentences with no, but, or however, have somebody bring it to your attention, you might be amazed at how frequently you do this. And just learning to stop doing this totally changed people's perceptions of this executive. We ended up getting very positive scores on being open-minded. Next, another thing to stop is, and you can use small amounts of money, is don't say that's great, but. When somebody does something good, if you say that's great, but, or that's great, however, again, what does that mean? Disregard everything that came before that word. And by the way, one thing I love about what I do in terms of coaching is it doesn't just help people at work, it helps people at home. That's great, but destroys recognition. Think of the little kid coming home with a report card. Daddy, Mommy, look at my report card. 4 times I made the high score. 1 time I made next to the high score. If we're not careful, what do we say? That's great, but why didn't you get the high score every time? What's the kid thinking? That's great, but why do I have a jerk like you for a parent? Well, very good to try to get better at work. Even more important to try to get better at home. And again, for 80% of us, the problems we have at work and the ones we have at home are the same. We're stubborn and opinionated at work. What are the odds we become excessively open-minded when we go home? It doesn't happen. The next thing under the stop list, and I use money for, is destructive comments. I'm sure many of you work in organizations that are out there promoting things like synergy and teamwork and cross-organizational communication and all such stuff as that. What happens to the quality of all that stuff when we stab our coworkers in the back in front of other people? Well, it doesn't get better. It gets a tad worse. Well, this is a bad habit. Well, I used to have this bad habit myself, and guess what happened? I started fining myself. In fact, my coworkers, I asked them to start fining me every time I made another destructive comment about a person or group because I decided to practice what I was preaching. Sure enough, one of our clients called. He said, "We need this and this." I said, "He wants somebody that was obeyed. It's cheap. $10. My partner Tim called. I said, "That fool, how do you get a PhD? He knows nothing. $10. By noon, I've lost $50, locked myself in the office, and refused to speak to anyone for the rest of the day. First day, it cost me $50. The second day, $30. Third day, $10. Still cost me money? Yeah. What score did I make on that last time? 4.8 out of a possible 5. What does this show? Spend a few $1,000s, you start getting better. So this is a fun technique. And by the way, what do I do with the money I use when I find my clients? I give it all to charity. How much money have we raised for charity playing these little games with my clients over the last several years? Answer, over $350,000. And it doesn't hurt anyone. Next, playing favorites. Now this is a classic behavior that is never supposed to happen but often does. Everybody says they hate suck-ups. Every company says they hate suck-ups. Every leader says we hate suck-ups. But guess what? If everybody hates suck-ups so much, how come so much sucking up goes on? Well, we all tend to create an environment where people suck up to us. And the example I use on this, and I'm going to ask you all to reply in, is the question. If you have a dog that you love, I want you to answer this. I want you to send a note to me. I want you to answer this question. First, do you have a dog that you love? Write down the name of the dog. It could be Rover or Fido or Bo, whatever your dog's name is. And here's my question. Who gets the most unqualified positive recognition at your home? Would that be your husband, wife, or partner? Or if you have them, would that be your kids? Or might that be your dog? Send in your answers. Send in your answers. Well, I've asked thousands of people this question. And guess what? 80% of the time, you know what the answer is? The family member that gets the most unqualified positive recognition is Margot, my dog, the dog, the dog. I'm looking at the responses as they come in. The dog is winning in a landslide. Yes, my dog again. Yes, yes, my dog gives me the most. Yes, yes, the dog doesn't prove I'm wrong. Yes, it's the dog. Yes, my dog wins. The dog is winning in a landslide. Now here's the important point. The next question, answer this. Send in your answers to this one. Why dog? Why dog? Send in your responses. Why do people sitting there saying the dog is the family member that gets the most positive recognition? Why is that answer dog for so many of you? Well, people say, the dog doesn't question me. The dog doesn't talk back. The dog gives me unconditional love. What's the dog do? The dog sucks up. What behavior do we reinforce? Suck-ups. And by the way, this is something we can see in everybody else. It's hard to see in ourselves. How do you avoid playing favorites? I ask my clients, rank order your direct reports 4 ways. Number 1, how much do they like me? Number 2, how much are they like me? How much do they remind me of me? Number 3, what's their contribution to the company and our customers? And then number 4, how much positive personal recognition do I give them? And if we're honest with ourselves, in 15 to 20% of the cases, recognition is more highly correlated with 1 or 2 than it is with 3. And we may be falling into a trap we despise in others. What is that trap? Without meaning to, teaching others to suck up to us. And by the way, if you'd like an article about this, just send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. At the end, just send me an email and say articles referred, and I'll send you an article about sucking up that was published. Now next, feed forward. Feed forward. I got a question. What is feed forward? I'm going to describe the feed forward exercise. And by the way, if you'd like the feed forward article, if you don't already have it, just send me an email, write feed forward. I'll send that to you. Feed forward is a fun exercise. I've done it with 6 people. I've done it with 6,000 people. You get up in front of the group and say, we're going to practice something called feed forward. Here are the rules. You're either going to be trying to help as much as you can, or you're going to be trying to learn as much as you can. Here are the rules. Rule number 1 is You're going to talk to people and you say, here's what I want to get better at. Everybody picks one behavior to improve. Then you say, I want you, if you don't mind, give me one or two quick ideas for the future. And the rules are no feedback about the past, only ideas for the future. And two, you can't judge or critique ideas. When people give you ideas, you can't say good idea, bad idea, I already knew that, that'll never work. No matter what people tell you, you must stand there, shut up, listen, take notes, and say thank you. So you say, I want to get better at X, give me a couple of ideas, get a couple of ideas. Next person says, I want to get better at Y, give me a couple of ideas, get a couple of ideas. You talk to as many people as you can possibly talk to. Then what happens is, at the end of the exercise, I ask people, how many people did you talk to? And usually it's a lot in a short period of time. Give me one word to describe this exercise. And people tend to say it's fun, it's positive, it's upbeat. They say great words. One of the most common words is fun. I say, what's the last word you think to describe any feedback activity? People say, well, fun. Then I ask, well, why was this fun? Well, they say it was fun because I wasn't feeling judged. I learned a lot. It was quick. It was positive. One gentleman said I listened almost better than I ever have in my life. I asked him why. He said, normally when others talk, I'm so busy composing my next comments to prove how smart I am. I'm not listening, I'm composing. He said, it's amazing how much better I can listen when all you can say back is thank you. And as part of the exercise, when you get ideas, you can't judge them or critique them. You just say thank you. He said, it is amazing how much more I could learn. Well, again, this is a fun exercise, and it's the essence of the way I teach about coaching. As I said, I've done it with 6 people. I've done it with 6,000 people. As long as you follow those 2 rules, no feedback about the past, only ideas for the future. You can't judge or critique ideas. I've never seen it fail. Then after Feed Forward, we practice peer coaching. And again, very excited about this peer coaching idea. I think this is really the way of the future in coaching. And in terms of peer coaching, I really ask people to practice in the session. So let's say I said I wanted to be a better listener. They got a lot of ideas in the Feed Forward exercise. Then they practice one-on-one with their peer coach, and the practice sounds like this. What did you learn? What you're going to do about it, and then the peer coach gives you ideas in terms of how you can actually execute back on the job. Now, the key problem in leadership development is not theory. The key challenge in leadership development is execution. The key problem is not knowing what to do, it's doing it. I mean, I'm very proud of my new book. When it was #1 best-selling book in the United States on the business section, the #1 best-selling diet book sold 10 times as many copies. Americans buy more and more diet books and keep gaining weight. Well, you don't lose weight by buying diet books. You lose weight by going on a diet. In this peer coaching, what we practice on is not teaching people concepts, just making sure they do the stuff. Now, moving ahead, I'm going to skip ahead on the beliefs of successful people. We're going to look at a model for developing yourself as a leader, developing yourself as a partner. And the model we use in coaching is a simple one. You begin by asking. You begin by asking people for input. How can I be a better leader? How can I, give me suggestions. How can I be a better team member? And you can either do this in a feed-forward process for just asking for ideas for the future, or you could do it with a formal 360-degree process. You know what I found out? It doesn't matter so much. Just get people in the habit of asking. Now, the reality is we don't ask. My friend Jim Kouzes did a big leadership, and I just got an email from him yesterday, did a big leadership profile study as part of his book, The Leadership Challenge, which, by the way, I highly recommend. And in Jim Kouzes' work, what item comes in last place from over 70,000 people evaluating their bosses? Ask for feedback about how he or she can improve. See, we don't ask. We don't ask at work, and we don't ask at home. I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. One, practice at work. How can I be a better manager, better team member, better partner? Practice at home. How can I be a better husband or wife or friend or partner or significant other? And practice with our kids. How can I be a better parent? And practice with our parents. How can I be a better son or daughter? I was teaching this class for the Kaiser Permanente company in Oakland, and there were 1,000 people in the audience, and a woman stood up and said, you know, I've listened to everything you've read. I read everything you've written. I've listened to you talk a couple times. You've always missed one thing. She said, you never talk about parents. Teach people to do this with their parents. She said, I called my mother, and I asked her, how can I be a better daughter? She said, my mother said, I live in the country, and Dad's dead, and I live by myself, and every day I had this long walk up the driveway to get to the mailbox. Every day there's nothing in the mailbox, and that always makes me lonely. She said it would mean so much to me if you just send me pictures or cards or letters. So I go to the mailbox. There's something in the mailbox. Well, she started sending her mother a picture of cards and letters. By the way, she asked me to teach this. I've taught it in every class I've done since. I've had so many people do this with their parents, and they're always happy they did. Well, she started sending her mother these cards and pictures and letters. What did it mean to her parents? Everything. What did it mean to her mother? Everything. What did it cost her? Nothing. So go home tonight. If you got kids, ask them, what can I do to be a better mom or dad? Tell them it's not about money or buying you things. It's about the way I act, the way I treat you. And call your parents. What can I do to be a better son or daughter? The parent thing is good for three reasons. One, it's good for them. Even if they say you're a great son or daughter, they'll appreciate it. Number two, it's good for you. What's the number one regret that children have when mom and dad die? Why didn't I tell them how much I appreciate all they've done for me? Number three, it's good for your kids if you have kids. That old person you're calling up on the phone, you can be that old person. You want them calling you up on the phone? Well, they don't listen to what you say anyway. They just watch what you do. So everything I teach is, it's all good at work. It's even better with friends and family members. They're even more important than people at work anyway. So get in the habit of asking. Then listen to what other people have to say. And my suggestion on listening is don't judge or critique. Learn to listen without judging. Think about what people tell you when you ask for ideas. Thank them. Just say thank you. Never promise to do everything people suggest. Leadership is not a popularity contest. You can't promise to do everything people suggest, but you can listen and thank them and then respond. I'm going to teach you how to respond to something called 360 feedback. As Lou said, I'm kind of a pioneer in that area. What's that mean? Getting old. I just won an award, Fellow of the National Academy of Human Resources. What does that award mean? Getting old. I'm now striving for the next award, the Lifetime Achievement Award. What does that mean? Almost dead. Well, how do you respond to feedback? Sounds like this. Let's do it like a role play. I just got 360 feedback. The way I'd respond is talk to your coworkers one-on-one in a way that sounds like this. You know, I just got this feedback. First thing I want to say is thanks. I really appreciate getting such feedback. You know, it means a lot to me. I know how busy you are. I appreciate you taking your time. I don't know who said what. A lot of my feedback is very positive, though. It's ethical, dedicated, hardworking, caring about our company and our customers. This means a whole lot to me. I just want to say how grateful I am, number one, that people took the time to help me. And number two, of all the positive feedback I got. And don't say but. Say, and there's something I'd like to do better. And what do I teach people now? Pick one thing. Don't make this complicated. I'd say something like this. In the past, maybe I've come off as stubborn, opinionated, know-it-all, trying to be right too much. If I've done that to you or the people around you, I'm sorry. Please accept my apologies. There's no excuse for this behavior. Then I'd say, you know what? I can't change the past. I can't change the future. I'm not going to ask you for ideas for the past. I'm going to ask you for suggestions for the future. You had to have ideas to help me be a positive and open-minded listener in the future. What might they be? Whatever that person says, sit there, shut up, listen, take notes, and say thank you. Don't judge or critique. Just say thank you. And then I'd say I can't promise everything, to change everything. I can certainly get better at one thing. Can't change the past. Can't change the future. Involve the other person. Change. Can people change? Definitely. Do people change? Maybe, which I'm going to show you in our research. And finally, the key to making everything I teach work can be summarized in one term: follow-up. You got to follow up and stick with it. And you should have an article that's been sent to you called Leadership as a Contact Sport. If you don't have that article, send me an email. Just put articles, and I'll include it in the package I send to you after this, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. What's follow-up sound like? It's pretty simple. Last month I said I wanted to be a more positive and open-minded listener. Based on my behavior last month, if you had to have an idea or two to help me next month, what might they be? It's been 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. What happens if you actually do this stuff? Well, this is research that was published in the Journal of Strategy and Business. Again, I have the privilege, they gave me the privilege of sharing this with everybody. So 86,000 participants, 8 major companies. What did we learn? Companies in totally different industries, by the way, made absolutely no difference. By the way, 12,000 outside the United States. There is no country in the world this doesn't work. Johnson & Johnson did a cross-cultural analysis, works in every country I've ever seen. Commonality, every leader got multi-rater feedback in this research. It was all shared with the consultant. They were asked to pick 1 to 3 areas for improvement that is correct from a research point of view. I now suggest pick one. Discuss with coworkers just like I described. Follow up just like I described. And then we did a mini survey. A year later, has this person become a more effective leader? Not as judged by themselves, but as judged by their key stakeholders. Table 1, What did we learn? People did no follow-up. The improvement scores, 5 different companies, simple scale. -3, less effective. 0, didn't change. +3, a lot more effective. 5 different companies. What did we learn? No follow-up. Improvement looks very close to random chance. Table 2. Table 2. The first table, my coworker did no follow-up. Table 2, my coworker did a little follow-up. Guess what? A little better. Some follow-up, lots better. Frequent follow-up, a whole lot better. And finally, consistent or periodic follow-up, massive improvement. Well, guess what? Every leader in this case, they all went to, in many cases, the same program. It was all taught by the same person, me, and got feedback on the same process. You know what I learned? If you get better, it doesn't have a lot to do with a coach or a book or a class. It's got to do with you. And if you really do this stuff, you get better. And if you don't do this stuff, you're kind of wasting time. Arnold Schwarzenegger said, nobody got muscles by watching me lift weights. Well, the key to leadership development is not understanding the practice of leadership. It's practicing your understanding of leadership. If you don't do this stuff, you're not going to get better, not because you sit in rooms. What have I learned? Follow-up works. What does not work? The program of the year syndrome. Americans love buzzwords. Oh, we have a learning organization. We believe in empowering people. We're transforming leaders. We don't have customer satisfaction. No, we call it customer delight. Americans love to come up with silly words, put them up on walls. Everybody hops up and down. Next year they change the words and do it again. Nobody gets better because of pep rally slogans and buzzwords. There's nothing wrong with that stuff if you build in follow-up to make sure people do it. If you're just throwing out pep rally slogans and buzzwords, nobody improves. This works at work, it works at home, and by the way, GE did a study, and if you haven't seen that, you can send me an email. I'll send you a copy of the GE study with HR people. Linda Sharkey, who's now over at HP, led the study. Their internal coaches did just as well or better than external coaches using this process. So what I love about the process for coaching is it's highly transferable. And again, with follow-up, you have to measure, does this work with direct reports? Does it work with coworkers? Does it help? Now, how does this relate to coaching? Well, first, this is a behavioral coaching process. It works if and only if 3 conditions exist. Number 1, the issue is behavioral. It's not intellectual, technical, or functional. Number 2, the person's willing to try. And number 3, they're given a chance. Number 1, never coach people that don't care. If people don't care, don't waste your time. Now, I'm going to ask everybody a question. Simple question, you can send me a response. Have you ever attempted to change the behavior of a husband, wife, partner, or significant other that had absolutely no interest in changing? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, send me a note. And number 2, how well did that work out for you? Well, it usually doesn't work out at all. You know, one thing I've learned in my coaching process, work with people that care. My friend Brian Underhill did a big study on coaching. You know what he found out? The real payoff in coaching is not fix losers. The real payoff in coaching is work with high potential people that have an opportunity to succeed. That's where the real payoff is. Don't position coaching as something that's bad. Position coaching as something that's useful. And by the way, the feedback I got is, yes, I've tried it, and no, it didn't work, changing people that don't care. Number 1, don't use this with people who don't care. Number 2, sometimes people are written off by the company. They're not given a chance. Don't use coaching as a seek and destroy technique to just jerk people around. It doesn't work with people that lack business, technical knowledge, the wrong strategy. Never coach ethics violations. Fire ethics violations. Makes me sick to read about people who have ethics violations and get coaches. Shouldn't get a coach if you have an ethics problem. You should be fired. And finally, sometimes it's just the wrong person in the wrong job. In those cases, you know, the best thing you can do is just help the person leave. Now, how does the coaching process work? Very simple. I have people collect feedback, or I collect it. It really doesn't matter how, as long as it's confidential and is perceived as honest. Help them analyze results. Have them respond to key stakeholders, just like I suggested. Then I give them ongoing suggestions. In the same way I teach peer coaches or internal coaches to do it, we have a rigorous follow-up system. Then I do many surveys to measure change. And as I mentioned, if they get paid, I get better. If they don't get paid, it's free. So that's pretty much how our coaching process works. Now, I'm going to wrap up with 2 things, and then if you have questions, please ask. And those on the call that want to stay a little longer can. I'll answer your questions. And those who need to take off can. How does the daily question process work? Well, this is my friend Andrew Thorne taught me this, and it really reinforces follow-up. And by the way, if you'd like a copy of my questions, send me an email, or a copy of this process, send me an email. You know, I have a partner, my friend calls me, he asks me 24 questions a day. Same questions. And we need to kickstart this process again. We did it for about 1.5 years. It's fantastic results. How's it work? Well, every day he asks me the same questions. The first question he asks me, and every question is yes, no, or a number. The process takes about 3 minutes a day. First question every day is, on a 1 to 10 scale, how happy were you today? Then he asks questions like, did you say or do something nice for your wife or your daughter or your son? How much did you work out? How much do you weigh? Just basic questions of life. And I get daily reminders. If I do this stuff, it helps me get better. If I don't, it doesn't. Now, some people have asked me, gee, why do I have somebody do this with me all the time? Don't I know the theory about changing behavior? I wrote the theory. That's why I have somebody do it with me all the time. I know how hard it is. I'm no different than anybody else. It's hard. This stuff's easy to understand. It's hard to do. Go on a diet and work out every day. It's not hard to understand. It's hard to do. Don't make destructive comments. It's not hard to understand. It's hard to do. Ask for input about how you can improve. That's easy to understand. We just don't do it. What I find in my coaching is my job isn't, my clients are all brilliant people. If you look at the first 6 pages of my book, you'll see who my clients are. Mostly CEOs or could be CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. I'm not some know-it-all that teaches them things that they don't know. I'm a facilitator that helps them learn from everyone around them. So the reason our coaching process is so transferable is it's not a coach as expert. It's a coach as a facilitator who's just helping people do what they know they should do and learn from the people around them. And my final exercise, which is my favorite coaching exercise in the whole world, is a great one to help you determine what's important for you to change. Are you ready? Take a deep breath. Take a deeper breath. I want you to imagine you're 95 years old and you're just getting ready to die. But before you take your last breath, you're given a wonderful gift. The ability to go back in time. The ability to talk to the person listening to this teleconference. The ability to help this person be a better professional, a better leader. More important, the ability to help this person have a better life. What advice would the wise 95-year-old you, who knows what really mattered and what didn't, and what's important and what wasn't, what advice would that person have for the you that's listening to this teleconference? You don't have to write down anything or say anything. Answer 2 questions in your own mind. Personal advice, professional advice. Whatever you're thinking now, just do that. Probably more important than anything I said on this call anyway. A friend of mine interviewed old folks who were dying and asked them this question: what advice would you have? On the personal side, 3 themes come up. Number 1, be happy now. Life is short. Great Western disease, I'll be happy when. When I get the status car, BMW. We all get the same win. I find happiness, meaning, and contentment now, not next week, next month, or next year. Number 2, on the personal side, friends and family. Your company is important. When you're 95 years old, you look around your deathbed, ain't no fellow employees waving goodbye. You start to realize that friends and family, they kind of matter. And number 3, if you have a dream, go for it. If you don't go for it when you're 35, you may not when you're 85 or 95. It doesn't have to be a big one, maybe a little one. Go to New Zealand or speak Spanish, buy a sports car. Other people may think you're goofy. Who cares? It's not their dream, it's yours. Professional advice isn't much different. Number 1, have fun. Life is short. Many of you all working 60, 80 hours a week out there. It's tough. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, go find something else to do. Life is too short. Number 2 is people. Take the time to help people. Coach people. The most important reason to do this has nothing to do with money or status or your company. The most important reason is a 95-year-old you will be proud of you because you did. A 95-year-old you will be disappointed if you don't. That's reason enough. That's not reason enough, you won't do it anyway. In the world of performance appraisals, by the way, that's the only one that matters. That old person says you did a good job, you did. That old person says you screwed up, you did. The rest of the stuff don't matter too much. The final advice is also the same. Go for it. The world's changing, your company's changing. Do what you think is right. You might not win. At least you can look in the mirror and say, what the heck, at least I tried. Final thing I'd like to say as we're running close to the end of schedule is I enjoyed talking to everyone. Lou, I'm going to let you kind of close up and say goodbye, and then what I think I'll do is just stay on the line, because if people do have questions, send them in. I'll answer questions. That way the people that need to take off can, and the others I can stick around and answer some questions. So Lou, can you do a little wrap-up for me?
This is Corey.
Corey.
If Lou's on the call still or not.
Okay.
But Marshall, I'd like to thank you very much. I personally enjoyed your call very much. Found a lot of good advice to take home with that call. And I want to talk a little bit about Best Practice Institute and some of our upcoming webinars.
Okay.
We have Jeff Davidson in, giving a speech here shortly, John Baldoni, Raymond Algar, Ed Lawler, and Steve Barnett. And we have a complete webinar schedule at thebestpracticeinstitute.org for anybody interested. And with that, I'd just like to thank you very much, Marshall, and leave you the floor for questions and answers. If anybody has any questions, please type them in the bottom. And Marshall will get to them.
Thank you very much.
Marshall, I want to thank you. This is Lou back on again. It was personally inspiring to me, and you've always been a huge force in my life. And it's just incredible what you've done for this field, and I'm always humbled by you. Thank you so much for helping us here today. It's just a privilege and honor. Thank you very much, Marshall.
Lou, before you hang up, first thing I'd like to say, I've known you for years, and I also want to say thank you for inviting me to do this, and also thanks for all you guys are doing, because you really are trying to do, I think what you're doing on an organizational sense is kind of the same thing that I'm doing on an individual sense. What you're really doing is you're trying to help people learn from those around them, and that's what I'm doing. So I teach people to learn from their coworkers, and you're kind of helping people learn from their coworkers in an organizational sense. I think very parallel to what I'm doing on an individual sense. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. It's phenomenal. Our partnership I value greatly, and it's just incredible. I'm out in the West Coast now as well. I hope to even get that chance to take a walk with your dog if I can get down that far. What a privilege would that be? And out in Rancho Santa Fe, one of the most beautiful parts of the world. And thank you for that invitation to our audience as well.
Well, again, anybody that ever wants to come out, and if anybody else does have questions, send them in. I've got a couple here. One, a common question is, do people really change behavior, or are they merely perceived as changing? And the answer is, interesting, it's much harder to change another person's perception than it is to change our behavior. It's interesting because we think, number one, don't fool people. And number two, there's a psychological principle called cognitive dissonance. We tend to view people in a manner that's consistent with our previous stereotype. If I have a stereotype about you that says you're a bad listener, I'm going to look for bad listener in whatever you say and do. And then whatever you do to reinforce that behavior will communicate bad listener to me. The reason follow-up is so powerful is when you start going back and asking for ideas every month, saying, hey, I said I wanted to be an open-minded listener. Give me ideas. Then people start saying things like, you're doing a great job. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. And what happens through the coaching process is not only does behavior change, perception of you as a leader changes. And again, in leadership, it doesn't matter what we think we said anyway. All that matters is what they heard. So that's a very, very good question. Another good question, how does this relate to people building on their strengths? Well, number one, I think the build on your strengths approach is kind of misused by some people. To me, for example, Tiger Woods should be a golfer, not a stand-up comedian. That is building on his strengths. But within golfing, he still needs to practice putting. He can't just sit there and hit drives. As an example, the world's greatest driver isn't even on the professional tour. Couldn't qualify. Well, you can't just sit there as a leader and say, I'm good at strategy, but I don't care about people. As a CEO, you don't have that choice. That's part of your job. Or you can't say, I'm good about people, but strategy doesn't matter. It's part of your job. So what you really need to do as a leader is say, if this is an important part of my job, I need to do it. If it's not an important part of my job, it doesn't matter. I am going to build on my strengths in the sense of that is quite true at the level of the occupation. Within that occupation, then, building on my strengths means I've got to do whatever it takes to be a success within this area where I do feel it is playing to my strengths. Lou, are you still on the line?
I sure am, Marshall.
Did that answer make sense to you?
It sure did. Part of what I'm seeing now in the world is that we're creating our own realities within others. And instead of doing that, we need to create our own realities.
Exactly. Exactly. Lou, I'm going to ask you, do you have any questions for me before I departing?
Well, should I become a drummer now that you've inspired me to do the things I want to in the world?
You never know. It may be imminently possible.
Absolutely.
So anyway, if anybody would like any document